Ever since the 1950s, many of us in the Western world seem to have been in an extended spiritual crisis. The great religious myths of the past are losing their power to inform our lives with meaning, purpose, and hope. We are privileged and condemned to live on the cusp between epochs reminiscent of the time when humankind switched from hunting and gathering to agriculture, or passed from agriculture to industrial economy. Old values, visions, worldviews, and ways of organizing social, economic, and political life are transmuting. In the twilight between the death of the old gods and the arrival of the new, there will be much chaos and the temptation to despair. Ours will not be a gentle time, and change is permanent, here to stay. It is to be expected that the great turning points in history, different parts of the body politic, move in opposite directions. The majority tries to hold on to the old ways, while the minority sets out to explore the new. You and I are destined to live out our years in the middle of a great paradigm war, a worldwide conflict between three mythic systems: the technological economic myth of progress, authoritarian religion, and the emerging spiritual worldview. Our situation is critical, but not terminal. Neither apocalypse nor utopia is likely to appear in the near future. I see the first signs of dawn, a new unifying vision emerging from the quests of disparate men and women. In the long run, the spiritual renaissance now in the bud will probably gradually change the way we conceptualize and experience the sacred, the way we organize our economic, political, and personal lives. I believe a new myth, with new politics, new economics, and new forms of social organization of cities, farms, and wilderness is being born out of the twilight. There's no way of knowing whether the emerging myth will thrive or perish, whether technocentric urban modern nations will have the will to survive and the capacity to move beyond the old ecocidal myth of progress, whether we have the resilience to reform our uncivilization. It's sobering to remind ourselves that history is littered with the remains of great civilizations that chose to die rather than to change their organizing myth. Hymns to an Unknown God is based on a hunch and a working philosophy I gleaned from a cartoon that showed a bearded prophet carrying a sign that said, "The world is not coming to an end. We will have to learn to cope." I think that if we listen closely, the voice in the whirlwind will certainly tell us about the death of the old gods and may whisper something about new gods now being born. So this is an introduction to a book entitled Hymns to an Unknown God by Sam Keen. He's a theologian. This was written back in the 1980s, late 1980s. Even though it's written from a theological point of view, what I want you to do for this discussion board is to kind of use your sociological imaginations and take this paragraph by paragraph and deconstruct it. I've put a copy out for you to print out to read for yourself. But I want you to go through paragraph by paragraph and expand upon what you think Sam Keen is saying here. Not a summary, but an expansion. So, for example, first sentence: ever since the 1950s, many of us in the Western world seem to have been in an extended spiritual crisis. Like, what does he mean? Like, why the 1950s? What was the catalyst for this extended spiritual crisis? What was going on globally or in the Western world? So as you kind of expand upon that, submit that to your discussion board, and then respond to three other people and try to get a discussion going about what you think's going on here. What is he talking about, and what is this emerging spiritual worldview, and how is this tied to this chapter on politics, religion, and education? Okay, so just get that in, and I'll see you in the discussion board.